Welcome back to the Mentored Show, which offers quick lessons packaged within minisodes for busy founders and startup leaders like you. I am Adel, and I'm being mentored live and unscripted by Ed, who's built, sold, turned around, and scaled startups all the way to the New York Stock Exchange. He's based in the US, a developed economy, and I'm based in Dubai, a hub within an emerging economy, and we compare notes. This is real talk, no scripts, no theory. Let's get into it.
The thing is, because also I've been involved in a few M&As, it's
Yes.
always challenging, and I've seen this when it comes to the comparison and execution, whether you create a skill matrix and then try to manage the emotions of these managers and heads. Do you create a committee that governs this, and you bring a third party externally that is not emotionally involved in any of these decisions? Are there any tools that you use to assess the quality of the individuals? I've seen this also where some companies, the CTO, one person or two people own everything, the full recipe. In some situations, that's considered a major risk. And if you're acquiring that company and you have these one or two people holding the code and all the master keys within their heads or their computers, and they're resisting that change, how do you deal with these situations?
Again, these are really big questions and important questions. Let me see if I can just pick off specific subsets of the question you just asked. A couple of thoughts. Strategy by itself is never enough. I think you can share crystal clear vision and mission and value statements to the target company executive team. And what that does is it provides a sense of direction for sure, but it's not going to move the needle unless you have some structure. So you need to know, as the acquiring company, how do you plan on pulling together a common leadership team between two different teams of executives? And this is where an outside advisor could certainly be very helpful for that. Start by measuring performance results of each of those executives. Are they doing well from a performance perspective in their own respective companies? I may have executives on my team that maybe aren't the best, and this is an opportunity now to up-level that skill set, that position, with a person from the other side of the table in the company that I'm acquiring. So that's one way. Another way, which I've actually seen work, and it's uncomfortable, is put every executive through what they call a personality test. And there's many out there, but the two that I'm familiar with that are very popular here in the US is something called the CCAT, Cognitive Criteria Aptitude Test. It's a test that's designed to see if a person can process patterns quickly. Can they make good decisions with imperfect information? And that's what that test tests for. The other test that is quite popular, again, here in the US, is a test called DISC, D-I-S-C. And the test is really more about personality. How do personalities work with each other? And the effort here is to design a management team that works well together, not agrees all the time, but knows how to have differences of opinion and work those differences out. So DISC is a test that stands for Dominance, Influence, Steadiness, and Conscientiousness, DISC. If you have people on the combined teams that are all Ds, right? These are dominant personalities. That might be a good thing. The emphasis of those people tend to be around accomplishing bottom line results. They're very confident, but they're very results driven. If you have a team of people that are all Is, these are influencing personalities, They tend to be more open in conversation, and they place a lot of emphasis on relationships and persuading others. So they talk a lot. They might not be very focused on results. An S personality, which is steadiness, these people they're very dependable individuals, but they place an emphasis on cooperation and sincerity. So they're good people building relationship skills that these folks have. A C personality, which is conscientious, they place a lot of emphasis on the quality of their work, their accuracy, their expertise, and their competence. These are the folks that are very detail oriented. Now, what's the difference, you might ask, between a D and a C? Because the Ds, remember, are very bottom line results. Well, you can get to the bottom line without being the most competent. You can get to the bottom line without being more accurate than anybody else. It's a style of how you get there. I actually think you need all of the above, right? You need a D, you need an I, you need an S, you need a C type personality. And you better figure out what kind of personality you're buying M&A transaction. Because you might have teams that collide and clash, and that raises your question about fear, uncertainty. Am I going to have a job when this acquisition is done? I think you have to go in as an executive team and realize that not everybody's going to make the cut. The other question I'd have, and this is back to basics, is if I'm making an acquisition, my target company needs to be at a minimum break-even operations, right? I would have to have a very compelling reason. Why would I buy a company that's losing money? Maybe it's got great technology. If that's the case, I would cut so deep to make sure that at minimum, I'm at break-even operations in that acquisition, right? If I'm buying a company that's break even, my first question is, great, how do I get economies of scale when I combine the two businesses so that I'm profitable? And if I'm buying a profitable company, that makes it a lot easier. I can kind of leave it alone for a short period of time. And my first question is, how do I make it more profitable? Right? But it's all going to come down to people. And this is where the comprehensive cognition test is important. And the DISC personality test is important. If you don't like DISC, go get something like Myers-Briggs. Again, this is where an outside advisor could be very useful to help you understand how does your current management team and the new management team of the acquired company come together? Can they come together? Is that helpful?
Yes, absolutely.
That's it for this minisode. Big thanks to Ed and to all of you for tuning in. If this sparked something, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and make sure you share it within your network. Got a question for Ed? Drop it within the comments. See you next time.
Please note, the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated organization. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. We encourage listeners to conduct their own research and consult with relevant professionals before making any business or career decisions.